As leaders, our time is one of our most important resources. It's constantly being demanded for, used, abused, and ultimately, we never have enough of it. We need to maximize our time in order to ensure that we are operating effectively for ourselves, our teams, and our organization. In order to achieve this, we need to increase our productivity, maximize our time management, and become as efficient as possible, especially with today's world. Today, my guest, Alexis Haselberger, and I discuss topics such as how she became a productivity expert, why balance is so important, how to prioritize effectively, why taking a break is so important, amongst many other topics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 114. Do more, stress less as a leader with Alexis Haselberger. Welcome one, welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and welcome to the podcast that's all about you as the leader to help you in the three domains of leadership, that is leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. Why? So that you can hit your peak performance, so that you can establish those deep bonds and connections, you can maximize the output of your organization, whatever that is. And you've come to the right podcast for that. And today, it's all about you. It's all about you and maximizing your time effectiveness and ensuring that you can be using your time the most efficient manner as possible. Why? It's simple. You feel it day in, day out. I know I feel it. I got a demanding job. I'm currently doing a master's program. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 young boys. I'm a podcaster. I'm a coach. I'm all this other stuff. And I have exactly the same number of hours in the day like you do. 24. That's it. And once you throw sleep on the top of there, I like a good 6 to 7 hours a night. Exercise, living, it gets chewed up pretty quickly. So we have to maximize our time, right? And it's no different than you as a leader in your organization. You only have so many hours a day with your people at work, at your desk, talking to your folks. You need to maximize it as much as possible. And that's why I have my guest, Alexis, here today. You know what? She's a time expert, productivity, and efficiency expert. She spent over 15 years of her career managing operations and human resources with early startups. And she just found that, there was a better way to do it. She believes in work-life balance, which is huge. I talk about it all the time. Well, she believes it's essential for everyone. As well, she helps people implement productivity systems and the companies she's worked for to ensure goals are met, balls not dropped, and most importantly, people stayed sane, because your sanity, is pretty crucial, right? So all that to say is she knows what she's talking about when we talk about productivity, time management, techniques, tricks, hacks, etc. This is a great episode. I really enjoyed my time with Alexis. You will enjoy listening to her. So without further ado, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy my talk about how you can do more, stress less as a leader with Alexis Haselberger. Alexis, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
You're already a star guest in my mind because we were just talking before the preamble, and you gave me a technical glitch to fix and how to fix it. So I'm like, you're already in my good books, but I'm sure by the end of the show, you're even going to be in the audience's good books. And that's about what we're going to talk about today, because it's a super important topic: productivity and being productive and managing your time, everything that goes along with that. So
how did you even get into this in the first place?
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm gonna start way back. Okay.
Back in the day, let's do it.
Go back in the day. So I was always a kid who like I remember being 8 years old and I would like break out the graph paper and compare it to the TV guide and like try to make sure that I was optimally getting the best half hour of TV that I was allowed to watch and like pull out the schedule, right? Like I was that kind of kid. And then in high school and like college, I became that kind of kid who I was like always interested in maximum ROI. So I was always like scheming and making deals with my teachers to try to figure out like, how can I get straight A's by going to class as little as possible, right? Like, so I was, I'd be like, okay, French teacher, if I come to class and I get A's on all the tests, how about I don't have to come to class between this test and the next one, right? Like I was making deals like that all the time. So I was always very much into like, how can I myself be excellent? Like I always had straight A's and things like that, but with as little time and effort as is humanly possible. And like, that was kind of my MO. And then when I got into the work world, I spent the first 15 years of my career running operations and HR in early stage startups where there's just like way more to do than people to do it. And like people are working crazy hours and burning out and all of that. And so I never was willing to work crazy hours. And so I was always trying to figure out like, what are the systems that I can build to make things repeatable so that I don't have to think about stuff, so that I can automate things. Like, how do I think about this so that like I can leave work and never have to think about work after work and work a normal week? And then I had kids and I experienced a similar thing where like everybody around me was also having kids and super stressed out. And like I was, I had kids, I worked full-time in corporate, and I also was the kind of crazy person who like made all my own baby food. And I was not stressed. Like I was not stressed in the same way that people seem to be. So I started like codifying, well, what am I doing differently than other people? And what are other people that I see kind of having success in the realms of like killing it at work and also having big, fulfilling personal lives with lots of free time? Because like ultimately I'm a lazy person that likes a lot of free time. And so I was just trying to figure out like, what am I doing differently? And around the same time, this is a long answer to your question, around the same time, like people at work were asking me to do productivity workshops. And like, I was helping a lot of people figure out like, how do you prioritize correctly? And how do you build a task list and all this stuff? And so when the last startup I worked for was shut down, as startups do, I decided that the time management and the productivity piece of what I had been doing was not only the most exciting for me because I'm a total geek about all this stuff and I love like figuring out different systems and like eking more out of the day so that essentially I can have as much free time as possible. I realized that was also the most compelling thing that I'd been doing for other people. Like it was the most impactful. It was the thing that I was getting the most sort of positive feedback on. And so I decided to see if I could make a business out of helping other people use their time in a way that really matches like their goals and their values.
Wow, you did all that. I don't think you took one breath. That's impressive.
Sorry.
Holy smokes. No. There's so much good stuff in there and interesting stuff. Like, it all boils down to, I love how you put it that you're a lazy person, because I always say the best inventions were made from lazy people because we just want to have more time. We want to have more free time. Some people do. Other people want to have more free time so they can fill it with other things. But hey, that's their prerogative, right?
Right, exactly.
But there's so many interesting tidbits in there right from day one of the graph paper and now all the way up to running your own business, having your own website, all around individual team productivity and all that stuff. So my follow-on question is, where do people go wrong from your standpoint? Like you talked about, those parents that are stressed out, those team members who just for some reason can't grasp the ability to prioritize properly. The boss, the leader who just feels like, their inbox is just filling. They got people, they got phone calls, they got this, they got that. And it just, everything's piling up on them. So where do people go wrong with their time management in the first place?
Yeah. So I feel like the absolute number one issue that I see that is like pervasive in everyone that I work with, who are also like everyone I work with are very successful people, right? They've just gotten there by brute force, right? But something I see in everybody is that we try to keep it all in our heads. We try to rely on memory instead of externalizing everything that we have to do so that we can actually see it, manipulate it, and prioritize it. So like, for instance, maybe it's because I don't have a good memory that like I've had to come up with a lot of strategies to kind of combat that. But essentially, like, I don't believe that we should use our brains to be remembering any of the stuff that we have to do. It should all be external. It should all be in a system, and it should be one single system, not, here's all these, I'm using my email as a to-do list, and also I'm using Asana, and I have like a different app over here, and also I have like, a spreadsheet that has tasks related to this one specific project, and I've got Post-its on my desk, and like I also just have all these thoughts running through my head, like my passport needs to be renewed in 7 years, and my driver's license in 2 years, and I need to buy my niece a birthday present next week, and in 2 months it's my dad's birthday, and like all of that stuff. We just keep it in our heads, even if we're using some kind of like rudimentary task list. And I think that's where people go wrong. Like that's the main spot.
You talked about it, right? The Post-it notes, this app, that app, spreadsheet, this thing, the other thing. There's always a great new app that comes out. Asana, Trello, Google Tasks, your calendar, Outlook, good old journal / agenda / planner, whatever it is. Now, I'm not a person who says, okay, this is the perfect tool, because I don't believe in one situation fits all. Yep. So how can a person go out there and figure, okay, I hear what she's saying. My memory is crap. It sucks. I shouldn't rely on it. I need to mark this down somewhere. But how do I figure out what tool is the best for me? Should I just try them, and trial and error and like, oh, that one doesn't work? Or is there a way to figure out how, this is actually what's going to work best for me?
Yes. So I totally agree with you that there is not like one specific tool that is going to be the best for every person, right? Like I say this as a person who like hates Trello, even though I know that so many people like run their businesses on Trello, right? What I will say, like what you're describing to me, it's like, I call it the graveyard of abandoned task apps, right? Where it's like, we've been searching for that perfect app. And so like our phone is just cluttered with like 15 different apps that all have lists that are completely stale. And like, if we looked at it, it would just be like stuff we didn't do from 3 years ago, right? And so I agree with you. I don't think there's a perfect app, but as a person who has reviewed probably 50 different task apps that are out there, I do have a few favorites. The one that I recommend most frequently to my clients is called TickTick, TickTick. No one has ever heard of it. And it's like by far the most user-friendly task app that I've ever seen. So that's one that I recommend frequently. And I think that the real thing about what app should you use, it's how do you find it, is like, it doesn't actually matter. Like as long as you have a task field, a description field, a date field, and a comments field, that's all you need, right? So like I used a spreadsheet, like before we had phones with apps on them, like I used a spreadsheet to accomplish the exact same thing, right? You just need to have certain fields. And that's what allows you to kind of say, okay, what is the thing I'm trying to do? What is the next action I need to take on it? When do I need to take that next action? And then what have I already done to document it? Like that's all you really need.
Right. So I like that. So, and I'm a huge app fan. I don't write things in journals or on paper because it just doesn't work for me. Yep. As much as my wife keeps trying me to write things down on like those agendas, I'm like, no, it just doesn't work for me. So I actually use Google Tasks because it just works, and the same with my G Suite and all this stuff. So it just it's all across one platform. That's what I like. Now, the problem which I had to get through was opening the dang thing to look at it, to remind myself that, hey, there's things in there which I need to do because I'd forget about it and I wouldn't look at it, and then I'd miss deadlines or the ball will get dropped. So what are some of the tips out there for the listener on, if they're going to go electronic, if they're going to go down the app route, which most likely they are, not everybody, but most people are going to go down that route, what's the best way to ensure that they think about opening it, checking it? Should they do it on schedule? Should they have reminders? What are some of your best advice there?
Yeah. So I actually think that whatever you're using, like if that's a bullet journal, if that's an app, if it's a spreadsheet, if it's a dot, like whatever, it actually needs to be open 100% of the time. And it needs to be the thing that drives the work you do. What I often find with people is that like they'll implement they'll spend all the time to like get everything in there and implement it. And then they don't update it in the moment as they're doing a task. And now it becomes stale, right? Like if you think of your task system or your task list as something that you have to update later, like, oh, I'll go in and I'll make all these updates, you're never going to do it. Because it doesn't feel like real work, right? And it becomes this thing that's kind of in the background that sometimes you check, and it feels like kind of like an overhead thing instead of something that's actually driving the work that you do. So like how I work and how I instruct a lot of my clients to work is like, it's always open on a tab on my screen. And every time I do something, like if I'm sitting down to work, I am looking at my task list and I'm seeing, what did I decide I'm going to do today? And I do the thing from the list, I update it, I do the next thing, I update it. And that way, my list never becomes something that becomes out of date, right? You never are like, oh, well, I'll update it tomorrow. Or like what I often see is people saying, well, I got so busy, I didn't use it. Right. And it's like, if you're so busy, that means you have to double down on it because the reality is if you're so busy, you're probably making poor decisions because you're not comparing, here's what I decided I was going to do. And here's this new shiny thing coming at me. If you're not comparing it to what you decided you were going to do in advance, then you're probably not making the right decision. Like you want to be saying, is this more important than what I decided to do today? Or is it not? And if it's not, it needs to be prioritized in. And if it is, then you can shift your priorities. But I think like what most of us do is we're just like, okay, we open up our email and we start checking it and we start doing the stuff. And then, a coworker stops by our desk and we get pulled into some meeting and, all of a sudden it's 5 p.m. and we've been technically working all day, right? Like we weren't screwing around. We weren't on social media, but nothing got crossed off of our to-do list. And like, I call this like letting the day happen to you. Right? Where it's just like you were doing stuff, but you didn't make progress on any of your goals.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I guess that kind of now we're going to go down the realm of prioritization of work. How can we do that effectively? How can we ensure that real work that needs to get done actually gets done? And like you said, the day just doesn't happen to us, that we actually achieve what we set out to achieve that day.
Yeah. So one of the things that I both do myself and I don't teach anything that I don't either do myself and that works, or that not everything works for every person. So that I don't know works from other people that I've seen, right? But one of these things is simply to start your day, like the first hour of your workday, don't check email. Like don't pull your email off the bedside, don't pull your phone off the bedside table and start scrolling, right? Like literally just do not check your email or Slack or any other kind of messaging until like an hour into your workday. And the reason for this is that the second you check it, even if you don't respond, but like the second you've seen that, now your mind is on like, oh, I got to get back to that person and this other thing is coming up, etc. And we don't make time for the important must-do things that we need to do because we feel so socially compelled to get back to people. And sometimes people say to me like, yeah, but I need to check my email so that I might miss something and there might be an emergency or whatever. Really, like I have never encountered a situation in which it really makes a difference whether you respond to somebody at like 8:30 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. Like they will not notice the difference. And if there's a true emergency, no one is going to rely on email to get you. Like they will stop by your desk and find you. They will call you, but like nobody's going to be like, well, Alexis didn't check her email, so we just let this client flounder over here. Like it just doesn't happen. And so I think like that's one of the best ways we can make use of our time and get work done on the important stuff that we might otherwise have a hard time to find is really just like delaying when we check messaging.
No, I really like that. So by day, I'm a Canadian Army officer, and our suite of programs is obviously Microsoft Office. And it wasn't until like, I don't know, probably my 15th, 16th year in that I actually attended an actual course on Office. And And the reality is like, oh, let's get out of the office for a day, right? Let's do something interesting. I'm pretty tech savvy. I pick up on apps and programs really easy, all that jazz. But my God, that one day of training literally changed my work life because I actually learned how the suite Outlook predominantly works. And one of the first things the instructor got us to do was change the default page that the program opens to from email to our calendar. And then it was like, oh my God, yes, because just like you said, it's not, I didn't get sucked into what the latest emails were, what was going in my inbox. I was actually focused in on what my day was set up to be. And I was pretty avid with my calendar anyway. I was always putting in all the different appointments and stuff like this. But I also got more into changing emails to tasks and assigning the tasks and the due dates and when I plan on working on certain things and stuff like this. And it completely just changed the way I worked and actually allowed me to focus in on that, what I needed to do. And I think out there, too many people just get sucked in. Here's the app, dive in, they start using it without actually even learning how to use it properly in the first place.
You're a leader. You're busy. You're busy taking care of your people. You're busy taking care of your organization. And if you're a small business owner and you're at the top of the food chain, you're here listening to this podcast because you want to know how to lead your people better. So you don't have time for that nitty-gritty details that revolve around marketing. Believe me, I get it. I'm with you side by side. So that's why, you know what? I've tapped into using Penji. If you look around at all my social media, banners and logos, they're all developed by Penji. Jonathan Grzybowski, co-founder of Penji, has been a great supporter of the podcast, and I'm supporting him. So if you go to penji.co, penji.co, and use the coupon code MFL15, you're going to get 15% off your monthly subscription. And that isn't just 1 month. No, that is for life. As long as you're paying into them, you're going to get that 15% off, which is huge. Check it out and see if Penji is right for you. Because you know what? I know they're right for me. Again, that is Penji, penji.co, and use the coupon code MFL15. And now, time to get back to the show.
Learning how to use it properly in the first place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because I am always harping on we have to change the default settings of everything to make it meet our needs, right? It's just simple things, right? Every single app on your phone, turn off the notifications. They're on by default. The default distracts us. We don't need them, and yet they're all just on. So spending 10 minutes going through all the apps on your phone and removing just turning it off the notifications will save you so much time in the long run because now you're not distracted every single time you get a ping because you're not getting those pings, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing. I love that about the Outlook. It's have it be your calendar because this is what I'm supposed to do today instead of email and Slack, which I always try to remind myself, email and Slack are other people's priorities. They're not mine. They might overlap, but I want to be able to make that decision. I'm not just answering someone just because they sent an email at this moment.
Now, I like that route. Let's go down this route. So how do you advise people to prioritize, all the inbound stuff where it's, whether it's Slack, email, phone calls, how should they go about actually prioritizing who they respond to, what they work on, and all this?
Yeah.
That comes together.
So I use a philosophy that I honestly do I know if I came up with it or someone else? Who knows, right? But what I use is what I call the one-touch rule for all incoming messaging. And so this is predominantly email, Slack, text, and things like that, but also voicemails if people are still using voice calls and things. And it is essentially this. One, if you don't have time to deal with it, don't read it. Right? Don't go into your email right 2 minutes before you have a big meeting with your boss. Read some angry email from a client. Now you can't respond and you're not going to be present in the meeting, right? So if you don't have time to deal with it, don't read it. same thing goes for like Slack and text, because the second you read it, now the little like red thing in the corner is gone, right? So now how are you going to find it again? Or are you going to remember, etc.? And so the way that I approach all types of messaging is, firstly, I batch process it. So like I check email probably 3 times a day, and I don't have it open at any of the other times. So it's like, usually I do like a mid-morning and after lunch and like a kind of early evening. And each time I go in, I'm processing it down to 0. And during that time, like what I'm doing is following a very simple, this one-touch rule. It's a very simple process. It is that for any incoming message, there are really only 3 things you can do. There are really only 3 responses. The first is that it's an informational message of some sort that you don't need to reply to, right? It's like an FYI, or it's some kind of newsletter or whatever, but it's like, read it, archive it, file it, tag it, just get it out of your inbox. The second is that you have the response so you can respond. So this is like, I think a lot of times people are like, yeah, I do that. I'm like, no, you don't. How many times do you mark that message as unread? Even though you really do have the answer. You might not want to send it because it's uncomfortable to say no, or because you don't quite have the right words. But like, if you have the answer, or it takes you 5 minutes to like Google the answer or whatever, like if it's something where you can reasonably supply a response, just respond, get it out of there. Like, don't read it 6 more times, have it be in the back of your head all day. Just like get out the response. And then the last category is things where you don't have the response necessarily. So you either need to get approval from someone, or you need to do some research, or it's a task or a project that somebody is asking you to do. And in those cases, you just respond back and say, great, got it. I should get back to you by, next Friday or whatever. And then that email needs to go on your task list, because now it represents real work that's going to take real time. And if we just leave it hanging out in our inbox, then now we have these 2 dueling task systems going, right? We have the inbox that's like all the stuff we still need to deal with, and we have our task system. And it's very hard to prioritize at that point, because you really need to be able to prioritize all the actual work into one system. And so most task apps have like an amazing email to task functionality where you just forward the email and it automatically creates a task.
I love that. I actually personally subscribe to the philosophy of zero inbox, quite similar, right? And because like you said, all emails, they're either info, whatever, it's a calendar, it's a task, or you need to respond. And everything that comes in, it's like, okay, what is this? What point is this email, message, whatever, serving to me right now? Oh, I have to do something? Well, guess what? That gets converted into a task. Boom, into my task program. Oh, this is a meeting. They just didn't use the meeting invite program. No worries. I'll convert it into a meeting. Boom, done, gone. Oh, this is just info. All right, tag it, categorize it, file it away. Out of my head. I don't need to see you anymore. I'll know where to find you if I need to find you.
Right. And also like every like if you're using G Suite and Gmail, right? Every email has a specific URL too. So it's like, if you're worried about not being able to find that, just pop it into your task system as the URL and you can automatically get back to it at any time.
That's super neat. Now, another thing I want to hit on is, I was going through your website, and one of the things you point out there is you talk about, rest and relaxation and using this for that purpose. So for you, why is that so important? Why is someone who's high strung about productivity, right, trying to figure out how to get things done as fast as possible? Why is rest and relaxation so important to you?
Well, I think, why is it important to me? Because I like to have a lot of free time. But like, why is it important kind of at a meta level? Is
Absolutely.
Because all of the studies show that breaks of any length increase productivity, creativity, and focus. And so like, whether that is that we're taking a 5-minute break because we're just like feeling unfocused and lethargic in the moment, or whether it's that we're like actually taking the weekend to decompress and not think about work, that's actually really important. Like if you think about the phrase sleep on it, right? Like that's like kind of folk wisdom for a reason, right? Often when we put aside the actual problem and have it kind of running in the background of our head, we're able to come back with actual actionable solutions going forward. Like, this is the same concept of like, do you have your best thoughts in the shower, right? Or like on a run. I know for me, like, I almost always have to stop my runs mid-run to like write down a blog post idea that I've just had and then continue on. Because when we're not like, there's just something going on in our brain where when we're not 100% focused on it at the moment, our brain's doing that work for us. And so not only is it just important to our bodies, like to be able, and our kind of like life balance, to be able to have time that's not focused on work and productivity all the time, but it actually makes us more productive.
Love it. I totally agree with it. I've talked about this at length as well in a very similar, frame. In that sometimes as leaders, you're trying to figure out a problem, right? And you're stuck. You get the equivalent of leader block, where you just can't make a decision. You can't figure out what the best way is to go, or you can't figure out the solution to the problem. I'm like, well, get away from it. Go for a run. Go for a workout. I used to often work out at lunchtime to put a break in the middle of my day.
Yeah,
and it helps. It helps to get me and get people away from whatever it is they're stuck on, forget about it, so that, the solution that's been staring you in the face for God knows how long actually pops to your face and you see it.
Right.
Finally.
Yeah. And there's a thing too, I don't know if you've experienced this, where like sometimes, if you're feeling like, if you're focused on something and then, you're feeling like, okay, I've lost focus, or like, I'm not able to really get through this problem or whatever it is. A lot of people have the instinct to like, I just got to focus more. Like, I just got to double down and keep working on this. Right. Whereas like, I actually think that's the perfect time to take a break, right? Like, if you like, let's not go against what our bodies and brains are telling us. Like, if I'm at a point where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling unfocused on this big project I'm working on, I will get up and like, I work from home. So I will often take what I call a productive break, which is where I listen to a podcast for 10 minutes while doing the laundry, or like something that is just like completely unrelated. Because then you find that, oh, like, okay, after 10 minutes, I can come back and refocus in a way that I never would have been able to if I tried to continue to like double down on focus in the moment.
No, absolutely love it. Alexis, this has been a lot of fun. It's been super interesting, and most importantly, super relevant to the leader out there in helping them lead themselves. So here at Moving Forward Leadership, I focus on 3 domains of leadership: leading the individual leader, leading themselves, then leading their teams, and leading their organizations. This definitely helps, can help right across all 3 realms, really, how it's implemented. Before we wind down, I got a couple last questions for you. And this one is one I ask all my guests here at Moving Forward Leadership. And that is, for you, Alexis Haselberger, what makes a great leader?
What makes a great leader? So I think that somebody who can lead by example, like you have to be full of integrity and accountability, is the most important thing. And I think, as a person that's managed people my entire career, like to me, accountability is the most important feature. And that is simply doing what you say you're going to do by when you say you're going to do it. Because if you can't do that as a leader, your people aren't going to either. And that's what you want out of them.
Could agree with you more, especially since it's in my ebook, The 9 Foundations of Leadership, right there. Be an example, word for word. Did you read that before you came on? I don't know.
I definitely did not, but I see we're aligned.
Awesome. Final question of the episode is, it's all about you right now. Where can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they learn more? Feel free to give yourself a chance. All about you right now.
Okay, perfect. Well, best place is my website, alexishaselberger.com, and I hope you'll put that in the show notes because no one's going to be able to spell my name. You can also find me on Instagram at do.more.stress.less. I'm on Facebook at Do More Stress Less. And also, if you're interested, I send out a weekly newsletter with productivity tips and time management, all sorts of things related to, leading and just being successful in your own life and reducing stress. So if people go to my website, you can sign up for that. You can also get a free distraction minimization action plan that will help you kind of eliminate a lot of those distractions in your life.
Absolutely. Just because you asked, it's going to be in the show notes for the listener. Actually, they're always in the show notes for the listener because it's all about making it easy for them. So Listener, just go to movingforleadership.com/114, and it's all there for you, including the TikTok app link. I'm going to throw that in there too, as mentioned resources. So check it out, movingforleadership.com/114. Alexis, again, thanks for coming out, talking to me about this important subject, most importantly, helping the leader being more productive with their time so that maybe they can do more or maybe they can be lazy.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember R squared, S squared, right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R squared, rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.